martial art. Techniques are not such a big deal because techniques can be from any school or thought or whatever. Those things come and go according to the moment. And as far as fighting is concerned, you know, we're all men here, we're all men, so we made it this far, so we had to have a fight or two in our lives. That's not the most important thing either. But understanding the principle behind martial art is basically what we want to work on today. Also delivering some understanding of history, cross-cultural martial arts. We teach at the Tibetan Institute ancient and contemporary African fighting sciences. Ancient, those things that were from the past a long time ago, of course, and contemporary, those same principles and things that were from a long time ago in a modern setting to deal with modern times and the differences in cultures that have merged together inside of modern living. You have to take that into account because we're not a tournament school or anything like that. We deal with self-defense and fighting, things like that. So it's not something that we do for the sport of it. As far as those things, we have to take into account whatever styles we encounter. So we understand and study cross-cultural or martial arts across the board so that we have an understanding of how to deal with those different things. Of course, today the hotbed is MMA, I'm sure some of you remember when the flavor of the day was ninjutsu, and before that karate, and whatever came, Muay Thai was hot for one time, college was another, judo back in the early 60s and things like that. So things change. Technique-wise, we don't do anything different than anybody else. We punch, we kick, we grapple, we throw, we have weapons, all those different types of things. A person with 2 arms, 2 legs are going to be limited to certain movements they're going to do. As far as my background, I've studied on this continent and the African continent. Now we're at the point to where we take martial groups over to study in the Gambia, in Ghana, the traditional martial arts of West Africa. We also have ties to South Africa with the Zulu stick fighting, Northern Africa with Saki and Nabuk, which is Egypt, Sudan, Nubia area. Ikulu, they say, and Duku, which is in South Africa, the stick fighting. In West Africa, Gidibu, Eke, other Nigerian, and also the Asafo arts of the Ga, Abotri, and others that we dip and dabble with as we encounter them on the African continent. The Tibetan Institute is the repository of all of those arts. We don't or haven't at this point in time made up in the arts yet. You know, if I become smart enough in the next 30, 40 years, I may try to make art up and put my name on it, but at this point I don't, I'm not moving towards that goal. Basically, I guess, like I said, it's going to be informal, so we can just go. What's your name again, brother?
Richard.
Richard, and what arts do you study? Jiu-jitsu. Any particular form? I mean, is it, Sanukas or?
Well, it's a blended.
Blend of things. Okay.
Jiu-jitsu. It's a blended thing.
Blend. Okay, that's good. You, sir?
Bob Martin, my own system is called Unified Force Martial Arts, and it just blends a lot of different things.
Ken Van Zandt, studied Jiu-Jitsu under Chapazu.
Greg Smith, Kubigani and Goon, Khalil, and I went to Kali, Silat, mixed in Kita Tertia in the Philippines, under John Jackson.
Okay.
Mark Turner, Kubigani and Goon,
Mark Smith, Aside Family System, also a couple at Angola, a couple at now, and also Swaziland.
Okay, good. And you know that one. Okay, well, are there any questions? I don't know if you all know my background or who I am or anything like that. You may have some questions for me. Other than that, we're going to get right into it, and we'll stop periodically to, you know, clarify things and stuff like that. So, any questions? So, no silly stupid questions. Just if we have them, ask, and you know, we endeavor to answer them. So, anybody any questions?
How did you arrive at the name Tamarian?
Tamarian is just a name that we adopted because of the land of Tamarian. It had nothing to do with the school itself. The building is called the Tamarian Institute.
Okay.
The arts inside of it are, you know, different arts. For that lack of word, different styles, you know, but actually in Africa you don't have styles like you do. Style is a modern concept, you know, started in the, you know, basically in the 1930s.
So Tamarian is not an African or culture, it's just the name of the area in Detroit?
No. It's the Tamarian. Tamaria was like where Nubia is
Yes.
today.
Okay.
And we just adopted that name in respect to the area where some of the arts originally came out.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
the name of our building, the school that we have, is called the Tamarian Institute.
Yes.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the fighting or anything like that. Any questions, anybody?
When did you arrive to the point where you felt as though you needed to educate yourself as far as the African arts is concerned?
Well, it was the late 60s. I was, you know, late 60s, Black is Beautiful, you know, the Panthers, the RNA, you know, Republic of New Africa, the Crimes of Black Madonna, Black Liberation Army, all the things were going on. And, you know, being a young man at that time, you know, I was studying martial arts and wanted to know more about everything. So if the Japanese and the Chinese and the Koreans and everybody else had martial arts, we as Africans had to have martial arts also. So I set off on a journey to find people that knew, you know, so I went to the different colleges at the time, different people to get information. You know, in Detroit it was a hotbed of information, you know, dealing with Africa, because, you know, that's where the Nation of Islam started, that's where the Shrine of the Black Madonna started, that's where the Republic of New Africa started. They had the second largest UNIA chapter outside of New York. You know, so a lot of things were going on in Detroit. You had a lot of access. Imari Obadeli and Gaidi, who was Omari's brother, are part of my family through marriage. And so we had access to Africans coming through to be able to talk to and to get information from. So that's basically it. You know, I just said, hey, you know, it's the 60s, you know, if they got martial arts, we got to have martial arts too, other than what we saw on Tarzan.
Exactly.
You know, we got some spears, you know, running around with paint and getting beat up by Tarzan.
Right.
So we had to have more. So that was basically my impetus in starting to get and gather information. Yes, sir.
What was your initial art? Were you training prior to your service?
Well, I boxed and wrestled, and I took from a friend who was across the street, older brother who had went through military training, stuff like that. I trained with him, and you know, blending that. And then, you know, in Detroit, you had different friends at that time who took karate and who took judo and things like that. So I would train with them. But basically, that was it. My father was a boxer. He basically, his most productive time as a boxer, where he would have basically, you know, went to champion, being champion or something like that, was short-circuited by World War II. So he went into World War II and he lost his most productive years. When he came out, he married my mother. He still boxed for a couple of years after that, but he lost his best years in that time between, you know, because he boxed at the same gym that Joe Louis did. So he was younger than Joe Louis, but he was one of the young guys when Joe Louis was there. So he basically taught me boxing. He boxed for a few years when I was young, and then he started training. So he started 4 world champions: Jimmy Paul, Danny Paul, Milton McCoy, and Martin McCoy. In Detroit, you box someplace, and then when you get up some wins and things like that, then they go to Crump. But they started different places. My father started those guys out boxing. We're at Lasky Recreation Center in Detroit, and that was a feeder to Crump. You know, so basically that's where I started out. You know, and then I emphasized just the African martial art, but you know, you can't divorce yourself from your background. You know, so boxing is part of Zulu arts, it's part of Kemetic arts, part of you have Nigeria has boxing arts, Timbe, which is used by the blacksmiths, even though it's used with one hand. You know, the front hand is used for blocking, and the rear hand is used for punching. You can kick and you can grapple, but you know, and they used to use crushed oyster shells, or the oyster shell itself, or metal, or spikes in the second hand when they really wanted to, somebody you didn't like and you wanted to fight. So boxing is part of it. And to be in urban settings, you have to, you have to know boxing, to add as addendum to your art. So, any other questions before we get rolling here? Yeah. Is there a question? Any questions, anybody else?
I'll wait till the question and answer session afterwards.
Okay, well, I'll be stopping in between and we'll be doing things. All right, everybody up, please, feet together, hands to the sides. Our salutation is feet together, hands to the sides. And when we salute, the right foot slides out, the hands come up in this position, and then we move back. So it would be salute, right foot will come forward, hands come up. We salute, hands back down, and we step back. So once more, we salute, right foot slides out, hands up, and back. All right? So salute, hands up, and back. All right. Kind of stagger, give yourself a little bit of room. I would basically start now, feet shoulders width apart. Right hand is on the top, left hand is on the bottom. And what we're doing is we step to the left and we're circling. And we'll step back to the right. Back to the left. Back to the right. Left. Bend the knees slightly. And what you want to do is make a little slight step in the direction you're going to end up basically the same way you were. So forward. Teeth together. Mouth closed. Tongue is in the roof of the mouth, up on the soft palate. Breathing in your stomach. Now, this is one of my basic movements, and it can be done with footwork in different directions. In other words, it can be done on the V, we're moving on these two lines. It can be done forward V this way, which is, these are movements and footwork that are in certain dances. If some folks who may be Yoruba, you know the dance of Shango is on the forward V. It's the same thing, but we're utilizing the hand motion. So to get started, all right, so what we're doing is, so from this movement, that's what this movement is. We're pairing, engaging, grabbing and pulling this way. So from here, this punch or arm is to the nose. What you're gonna do is get a partner. One side is gonna do it for about 30 seconds, same movement. And then the other side is gonna switch. Yeah, go that way. All right, so this is the movement we're doing. You don't have to touch this time, but just get a partner, face each other the long way this way. Well, it doesn't matter, just get a space, move out. Yeah. And, okay, you want to go to your left, left hand first. Left is Larry, left and right. Come under, so left and right, grab and pull, step with the left. That's good. Line yourself up again. All right, then you're gonna come this way, right first, left under, and step this way. Okay, you want to coordinate those steps the same way we were doing here? One, two, three. Come back, 2, 3, step, very good. Okay, switch sides. If you haven't already, switch sides. Three, good. Yeah, go back to the front. Good.